Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate, and we're looking at the first round of local elections in Italy. Local elections, but we're talking about it because, most notably, Rome City Hall could go outside of a mainstream party for the first time to the Five-Star Movement, which before 2009 didn't even exist. From the Five-Star Movement, Laura Ferrara, member of the European Parliament. She is with us from Strasbourg. Welcome back. Welcome back as well to François Lafont of the French Political Science Institute, Sciences Po. He is in Rome. Rachel Donadio, former Rome bureau chief for the New York Times, now based here in Paris. And Sergio Romo, columnist at Corriere della Sera, who is with us from Milan. Welcome back to all of you. Rachel Donadio, did you ever think that someone from a party like Five Star could one day be at the head of Rome City Hall?
Well, you know, a lot of things are possible in Rome. It's a city with kind of very cynical political customers. And also, as we've discussed, there have been a lot of corruption scandals where people are just kind of fed up. And I think that we've discussed that all politics are local, and the Rome mayoral election is no exception to that. But I also think that what's interesting is in the last few years, as the Five-Star Movement has gained more momentum, really picking up in the national elections of February, March 2013, that it has shown that it is, I think, as a reader wrote in, a kind of big tent, somewhat populist movement. It's hard to pin it down. Is it right or left? It's kind of its own thing. The woman running for mayor of Rome has said, let's make Rome great again. She sounds kind of like Donald Trump. On the other hand, the Five-Star Movement has a lot of supporters who are young and online, and they sound almost like Bernie Sanders voters who want young people to have a chance and don't want this entrenched political establishment to continue. I do think that, again, it's a local issue in Rome, but because of the particular unique landscape in Italy in which Berlusconi came down, then there was a technocratic government of Mario Monti, then there was inconclusive elections in which the Five-Star Movement did well, then there was a center-left government that didn't do very well, and then Matteo Renzi took over the party without being elected. And I think that he, in some ways, young, bright, presenting an air of change, in some ways that has to be a response to the success of the Five-Star Movement. There is this feeling that people want change in Italy. The question is whether that change is coming from outside the kind of political establishment like the Five-Star Movement, or whether the establishment which Renzi represents can keep that momentum.
Sergio Romo, the traditional left-right divides that we all know around Europe, are they being scrambled?
Oh, they are being scrambled indeed, but that is something that we knew, and we have seen it coming for a long time. There is no doubt that the era of neoliberalism after Mrs. Thatcher has gone, and people are very worried about their future. And there is no doubt that in all the capitalist countries, the distance between the rich and the poor has become so wide that we have created a new kind of proletariat. And that doesn't really belong with the left, because they were not born proletarians. They have other values, other traditions in their families, in their environment. This is quite difficult, of course, but it is dramatic and it isn't tragic. Coming back to the Five Stars movement, I think it is an ephemeral phenomenon. I know that it is risky to say that it is an ephemeral phenomenon when they do manage to get votes. But quite frankly, the idea that they may really manage one day to govern the country when we don't really know what they are going to do, because they don't have a project that makes sense. They talk to the people of Italy simply because there is a new means of communication, which is internet, and which allows people to connect with somebody else at all time of the day. And this too, I mean, is a not very well-tested way of doing politics. Frankly, I know that one should worry, but the Five Stars movement, I just cannot force myself to worry too much.
Laura Ferrara, I know you disagree when Sergio Romo calls it an ephemeral movement. Let me ask you, Laura, like the frontrunner now to become Rome mayor, you're in your 30s, you're a lawyer by training. What were your politics before you went into politics? How would you characterize how you grew up? What were your values when you were at university?
Well, I have a degree in law, and I have a PhD in theory and history of human rights. So all of my studies, all of my work, I'm a lawyer, a penalist lawyer, are in this perspective, in the perspective of the protection of human rights, in the perspective of the protection of human rights of migrants. I have done a lot of work, voluntary work with migrants and also with detainees. So it's a kind of do politic every day on a voluntary basis for the protection of all the citizens, or in particular of the vulnerable subjects. And let me say just one thing about the issue that Five-Star Movement have no project, have no a serious project. Well, we are demonstrating that we have precise points about all the things, about the anti-corruption, about the migration fluxes, the management of migration fluxes, about the foreign affairs, about the environmental politics, about the energy politics, so and all of other things, about public water. So we have a very precise project, and all of the points that is included in the Five-Star Movement program is presented in the national parliaments and in the European parliaments, and also in all the cities where there is a government by the Five-Star Movement. So citizens know
let me ask you,
it.
as somebody who's done a doctoral thesis on human rights, how do you feel about remarks that are still made today by your party to keep immigrants out?
No, I don't think that my party said migrants have to keep out. It's an issue of best management of migratory fluxes. Now there is a lack of cooperation between all the member states of the European Union. We are saying from years that the most of the responsibility is on the head of Italy, of Greece, and of all and of few member states of the European Union. So what we are saying is that we need the cooperation of all the member states, because there is the Article 8 of the treaty that says that we need an equal distribution of responsibilities. So we have to act. We don't need minutes of silence. We don't need the solidarity expressed by words. We need facts by the other member states. So what we are doing is to protect the human rights of all the human beings. But if there is someone that has no title, has no need of international protection, we have to do all the things to ensure a repatriation in their country of origin in the respect of human rights. And this is the most difficult issue. This is the most difficult issue because we have only 4 bilateral agreements between Italy and other third countries.
When it comes to this, Rachel Donadio.
I think, everyone agrees that Europe has to do something more to make the situation of migrants more tenable. But I feel like Grillo has made some remarks that have been interpreted as almost, critical of Muslim immigrants, and I think that has helped some of his support on the right-wing voters in Rome and places like that have voted for the Five-Star Movement. Again, it is. In Italy, we're not seeing, as Ambassador Romano said, we're not seeing a kind of hard right, fascist-style movements the way you have in Eastern Europe. But I do think that some of the rhetoric of Grillo has shored up his support on the right.
Lots of reactions on the hashtag F24 debate. Far right almost wins Austrian elections. Five-Star Movement leading polls in Italy. National Front at record levels of support in France. EU working wonders. A bit of irony there. By the way, Beppe Grillo, no longer the leader officially of the party, returning to satire and stand-up comedy. Beppe Grillo, who back in 2014, in the run-up to European elections, pointed to the Eurozone crisis and seemed to talk up, I guess, what you could call a separate Club Med inside of the EU.
If we have a debt, we share the burden with everyone, like a beautiful community. We might be working with Spain, Portugal, France and Greece. We'll have common programs, and together we'll go far. We'll go to Brussels and make our voices heard.
François Lafont, your thoughts on where things are going to go now in terms of the Italians and Europe? Are the Italians falling out of love with Europe? This is the Eurozone's third largest economy.
This is a good question, François. I don't know the answer. What I can say is that, of course, the immigration issue is something important here in this country. The Italian government was disappointed by the partners because the reallocation system, which was decided last year, taking 160,000 migrants already there. It was July that it was decided that, July last year, has not been implemented in a lot of countries, and even in France, if I'm not wrong, 1,000 on the 30,000 have been welcomed. So there are the issue of migration, which is an important one, and the Italians fear what's going on, because now that the Balkan Strait is closed, they are coming again via Sicily, via Lampedusa, and the number is increasing. So the Italian government has done a proposal to the partners. This is a migration compact, which tend to be more active on this side. Then, of course, the Eurozone crisis is still there. So the Italians have, of course, the necessity to show that we have some concrete results. I'm not sure that, again, this election is for that. But the main question for the European Union is to deliver, to make sure that we manage the migration aspect. We try, and this is going better. I mean, the economic situation is going better, but it has to be more dynamic in a certain sense. And of course, the action of this government, I mean, the Renzi government has done a lot for that. I mean, and maybe the main election this year will not be the one that we are talking about now, but the referendum who is going to be held in October, where the Prime Minister will play his role and saying, do you want to change the constitution and so on? And it will be the big game changer, I think.
I want to ask our panel about that constitutional referendum in a moment, but first, because we're 2.5 weeks away from that Brexit referendum, and for the first time this week, the poll of polls compiled by whatyouthink.org puts the out camp in the lead, 51 to 49%. Again, Laura Ferrara, your movement is in the same voting bloc as UKIP. Will you be happy if the United Kingdom leaves the European Union?
Well, it's a difficult position because we think that if you are a part of the European Union, you have to cooperate, you have to share a same project. So now it's difficult to talk about a real union in the European Union. So we don't know
same referendum?
Well, no, I think that, well, the referendum in general is the best instrument that we have, the best tool that we can give to citizens, because we give the possibility to citizens to get, first of all, informations, and then to have the possibility to say which is their position.
Right,
so
should
the
Italy
referendum
have a referendum on EU membership?
Is always a good tool. Well, I don't know if we need a referendum about the European Union. We will say, because we are fighting to have a real union in the European Union, but if we don't reach this scope, and if we will continue to get only austerity politics, unemployment, and the most of the charge, the responsibility about the migratory fluxes, then we will let the word to citizens.
Let me bring in on this Sergio Romano. Your thoughts about how, yes, it's true. You said it in part one of our discussion, Sergio, that this is a local election, but it's part of a broader trend.
Yes, it is part of a broader trend. There's no doubt. And I think the lack of solidarity shown by the European Union has probably made the case considerably worse than it used to be. If I look at what happened in Europe, however, during the last 5 years or so, I must say that one should be also surprised and gratified by the fact that we have gone on trying to share sovereignty. Because there is no doubt that what the banking union, the European stability mechanism, and all this really are steps forward toward a more united Europe. There is the case of Britain, of course. Now, if Britain goes, I'm not entirely sure that this will be damaging for the European Union. I know it'll look like a lack of confidence. Maybe the markets will react badly for a few days. But quite frankly, Britain came into the European Union to make sure that the union would not be accomplished.
Won't it further upset the balance among European countries? Even more concentrate the power in the hands of Germany?
Well, Germany has been made a kind of devil. I mean, now we all think that it's going to be the Fourth Reich and that sort of thing. Every time they speak, every time responsible German politicians says that they do not want to pay for the debts of the other partners of the Union, they do say, however, that they are prepared to share greater pieces of sovereignty, so to speak. They keep saying it. Even Schäuble has said it a number of times. And it is no doubt that they've got to take into consideration that all sorts of problems of this kind have got to go to the Bundestag. So they can only justify it in front of the Bundestag if it goes together with sovereignty share.
So Sergio Romano, to the point that François Lafont made later, that Italy too is having a referendum, probably in October, on constitutional reform. It will dilute the power of the Senate. Is that referendum being undermined by these local elections? Will Matteo Renzi get his way?
Well, Matteo Renzi will definitely be damaged by the election of a five-star movement mayor in Rome. There is no doubt about it. Whether this is serious or not, whether it matters for the future of the country or not, it's irrelevant. The consequences for the prime minister will definitely not be good. And that is why he says, my stakes are on the referendum. He says the right thing, by the way, because there is no doubt that the referendum concerns the whole country for the future. It is a change in the constitution. Is it a good change? Well, we should answer another question. Was it a good constitution to have two chambers doing exactly the same thing and repeating every single vote for every single law? The confidence had to be voted twice. This is something that isn't done in any other European country, and it is quite obvious that it has slowed down the Italian political process remarkably. So it's a good reform as far as I'm concerned. What they've done with the Senate is not particularly good, because the Senate, deprived of its original powers, has become a sort of neither flesh nor fish. What is the English saying? Neither fish nor meat. Obviously, something else will have to be done about the Senate.
Something else is going to have to be done about the Senate. Let me ask you, Rachel Donadio. Italy, for years people said it was unreformable. This referendum, is it going to fly, and will it reform if it does?
Well, you have to remember that Prime Minister Matteo Renzi called for this referendum to streamline the political process. It's really a referendum on his government. He said he'll step down if it doesn't win, and it's a way for him to kind of secure a certain sense of his hold on the country, because he wasn't elected in elections. He was elected taking over the PD party. And I think that it's interesting that he you know, he's calling for this, yes, to reform the system, no, not to. And the Five Star Movement that got into power saying it wants to change the political system and it's too corrupt and there are all these politicians who don't do anything, it wants to vote against that referendum. So I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. It is, again, the specifics of the referendum, but it's also a referendum on Renzi's government. Italy has 630 members of the lower house, 315 members in the Senate. It's a pretty bogged down system. People have wanted to change it for years. Renzi gives the appearance of change, and will he come through with it? That's the question.
630. I thought we had too many with 577 here in France.
So many politicians in Italy, and that's one of the reasons that anti-establishment parties like the Five Star Movement have done well, saying, who are all these people and what have they done for us lately?
All right, Rachel Donadio, I want to thank you. I want to thank Laura Ferrara for being with us from Strasbourg, Sergio Romano in Milan, François Lafont in Rome. Stay with us. Our Media Watch segment is next. And we say hello to Emma James.
Hi there.
So Virginia Raggi, poised to take City Hall in Rome at 37 years of age.
Yes, and it's interesting that you choose to focus on her age, because when you take a look at what's being said online, there is a lot of focus on the fact that she is a woman. Of course, it's important because she is set to be the first female mayor.
Paris
of
has
Rome.
its first female mayor ever.
Exactly, and it's not incredibly unusual, and perhaps the focus on it seems a little bit out of kilter with the fact that we are now in 2016. Have we not moved on enough? But apparently not. The Irish Times is typical of the kind of headlines that we're seeing in a lot of places. On track to become Rome's first woman mayor. Now, for me, her credentials as anti-establishment are so much more important than the fact that she's just a woman. But if we take a look at this article from Breitbart, they really hit a new low. Elegant brunette leads populist revolt in Rome mayoral race. It is just stunning that anyone would think that that is a suitable way to headline this particular story. But that is the world that we live in, unfortunately. If we take a look at Le Parisien, they've done a profile on her where they talk about a woman at the head of the eternal city. And they go on to describe her as a very pretty lawyer who's 37 years old. The very pretty is the first thing they say. The lawyer, the age, that comes later on. Lobs as well, and it's not just French newspapers, it is around the world, but Lobs have chosen to use her nickname, Sexy Grillina, which is, to my mind, a double whammy of sexism, because not only are they calling her sexy and denoting that as the most importance, but they're not even giving her her own name. It's a form
yeah, because
of
party, if I understand this correctly, tell me if I'm wrong, party members are called grillinos because they have to report to head office.
Well, the party was founded by Beppe Grillo, and so the members of the Five Star Movement are called grillini, which are like little grillos. So grillina is the feminine form of that. Still, you know, sexy, I don't know. You have to remember that we're coming out of Berlusconi's Italy, too, where there were a lot of debates about women in politics and the depiction of women. And it's interesting that there are these young women running for mayor. But as you point out, I think the anti-establishment in this case is more significant.
So give it to us straight. Which is worse, France or Italy?
I'm not going to answer that question.
All right. She pleads the fifth. Emma James.
I can't say I blame her. But if we take a look at Virginia Raggi's own Twitter account, I mean, this is typical of the kind of thing that she produces to promote herself. And there's nothing sexy about it. She is not exploiting the fact that clearly she is beautiful. There's no getting away from that. But it doesn't have to be front and centre, and it shouldn't be front and centre. But Le Figaro, again, another profile, a very pretty profile photo there with her in front of the flowers. And this Twitter user says, why did you start by talking about her silhouette, her grace, her hair? And it is something that we just don't see with male politicians.
Well, when Matteo Renzi burst onto the scene, he was the 37-year-old mayor of Florence at the time. Were there similar kinds of articles talking about his physical appearance?
They didn't talk so much about his looks, but they talked about his age and the fact that he's young in a country of dinosaurs. Italy is a country of dinosaurs, and the fact that there is this kind of youth movement, the age was very much a part of it. But no, it's not Matteo Renzi. Although in Italy, people say he doesn't dress as well as some other politicians do.
I think probably the only male politician that's come in for the same kind of treatment is probably Justin Trudeau of Canada, where he really has been painted as a poster boy for politics. But going back to Italian publications, Blitz Quotidiano says Virginia super sexy, and they talk about the fact that she was wearing a transparent top. But when you click on it, if you were tempted to, because you want to see what this transparent top was like, that's the image that we've got. It's really not an extreme example. And actually, they've cut it off at the point where you see she actually has something underneath, a sort of a vest top. So nothing is revealed at all. Yet they're trying to sort of sell their article by pointing out that she might be showing a bit of flesh. And finally, this one is another Italian website, photos of the candidate for the mayor of Rome. And again, they are focusing on what they clearly believe to be suggestive. Her tossing her hair and putting her tongue out, and the fact that she's been known to wear short skirts on television. And that is the focus for an awful lot of people, and it does seem quite astounding in 2016, as I say.
All right, Emma James, I want to thank you. I want to thank our panel once again. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.